The crime scene of this case was so terrifying that the police officer reporting was never able to return back to work. One pathologist who examined the bodies said the bodies looked like plane crash victims. The nature of this crime is graphic and viewer discretion is advised. Welcome to True Crime and More. And today's story is about the De Gruchy family that lived in Albion Park Rail in Australia. Wayne De Gruchy and Jennifer De Grucy had 3 children. Matthew, who was 18 years old, his brother Adrian, who was 15 years old, and their sister Sarah, 13 years old. On March 12, 1996, Jennifer was home with her 2 children, Adrian and Sarah, while Wayne was away for a business trip in Sydney, an hour and a half drive away from their home. Matthew, the oldest child, stayed the night at his girlfriend's house and had just returned in the morning. When Matthew got home, he quickly grabbed his wallet and then left for a trip to the local store to get a pack of cigarettes. Shortly after, he came back home and noticed something odd. Usually in the morning, his mom would be making breakfast and his 2 younger siblings would be up. He got a strange feeling because it was too quiet for a morning at the De Gruchy house and went to check up on everybody. Soon after, panicked Matthew ran outside, screaming and crying for help. The next door neighbor noticed Matthew in a panic state and ran to help him. The neighbor asked Matthew about what was going on, to which he responded there was something wrong with his mother and his sister. Worried, the neighbor ran inside to check on them, and that's when he came across a horrific sight that he would never forget. Inside the home, he saw bodies of family members that had been savagely attacked. The neighbor immediately called the police. The police arrived at the scene soon after the phone call was made. Like the neighbor, police were in shock when they saw the crime scene. Belinda Neal, a former homicide investigator, also stated that this was the worst murder and crime scene that she had seen in her lifetime and contributed to her early retirement. When the police entered their home, the mother, Jennifer, was on the bed with blood splatters all around her. Her head was completely beaten in. Her face was so brutally injured that there was brain matter coming out of her skull. Someone had attacked her while she was sleeping, then covered her face with a pillow, and then savagely beaten her face with a heavy weapon. Her condition was so bad that the police were unable to identify her. Blood samples had to be used in order to make an identification. Like Jennifer, the 13-year-old Sarah was also found in her bed with brutal injuries to her head and her face. In her bedroom, a Walkman was found next to her, indicating that she was likely listening to music and had failed to listen to what was happening around her. However, her arms had defensive bruises, meaning she attempted to defend herself from the killer. Adrian was found in the garage where he was doing woodwork before the attack. Based on the crime scene, he had been attacked from behind with a heavy object. His neck and head were struck violently, leaving him with 21 wounds. The beating was so bad that a number of his teeth were scattered on the floor and there was blood found on the ceiling. The wounds on all 3 bodies were similar, and based on the autopsy, investigators placed the time of the crime to be between 8 p.m. to 1 a.m. It was also determined that the bodies were bludgeoned with a heavy metal object. At the crime scene, there were multiple clues found. There was a carpet piece missing from Jennifer's room. Matthew told the police about few other missing items, including a video recorder and a calculator. The investigators searched Jennifer's car, where they noticed some more missing items. A wheel brace from the car was missing. Investigators wondered if that was a murder weapon that was used to kill all 3 victims. A small carpet fiber was also found behind the car seat. This was similar to the one that was missing from Jennifer's room. A robbery gone wrong was considered by the investigators. However, there was only few missing items, and many of the valuable items were not touched. The savage nature of the beatings did not seem like a robbery gone wrong. The investigators quickly dismissed this theory. After analyzing the evidence, Wayne De Gruchy, Jennifer's husband, was concluded to be the first suspect. The reason for this was one witness stated they saw his car near the crime scene on that day. However, Wayne had good alibis. He was at a golf club during the estimated time of the crime, and after that, he slept at his parents' house in Sydney. Several people at the club were able to confirm his whereabouts. Also, the car normally used by Wayne was in a motor vehicle accident few days prior and was under repairs. As a result, Wayne was no longer considered a suspect. However, the investigators did have their eyes on someone else. That someone else would be Matthew De Gruchy, Jennifer and Wayne's oldest son. Matthew's statement had few inconsistencies. The neighbor vividly remembered that when Matthew was panicked outside of his house, Matthew had said that there was something wrong with his mom and Sarah. The neighbor remembered this clearly because he immediately thought that Sarah may need medical attention as she had a pre-existing epilepsy disorder. However, during his interview with the investigators, Matthew stated that he did not go to Sarah's room. But if this was the case, how did he know that there was something wrong with Sarah when he initially spoke to his neighbor? Another thing investigators noticed was how quickly Matthew was able to identify the missing items. As per his statement, Matthew was only in and out of the house, so it was odd that he was able to recall the missing items almost immediately. The night prior, Matthew was supposed to be at his girlfriend's house by 8 p.m. However, he arrived at her house by 11 p.m. When she asked him why he was late, he stated that an unknown person had been calling the house and saying that they are going to kill the entire family. This is why Matthew's mother had asked him to stay with them a little longer as she was afraid. The investigators then went through the house phone call records, and no calls from an unknown caller were identified. This placed Matthew at the crime scene during the time of the crime. At this point, the investigators were in desperate need to find the murder weapon. They would be in luck when few teenagers discovered a bag at a nearby dam. The dam happened to be near Matthew's girlfriend's house. This ties to the case as Matthew had just returned from his girlfriend's house before he found himself at the crime scene. The bag found contained the missing pieces of carpet, a video recorder, and other items missing from the Gruchy household. Surprisingly, these were not the only things that were found. A ripped-up note was also found in a Ziploc bag. After the reconstruction of the note, it appeared to have instructions for a fake robbery, which included names saying Mom, Sarah, and Adrian. It also said tracksuit, pants, knife, t-shirts, shoes, travel, open blinds to see, have shower, hit arm with pole, hit leg with pole. Shockingly, the note was found to be in Matthew De Gruchy's handwriting. This would become a key evidence in the case. At the time when the teenagers found the bag, they also found a hammer. They took the hammer but left everything else at the dam as it was no use to them. They played around with the hammer and eventually lost it. The hammer was never found. It was also determined that Matthew and his mother had been having arguments due to Matthew overusing the car and adding significant mileage to her car. Investigators believed that Matthew argued with his mother about taking the car to visit his girlfriend, and eventually the argument resulted in a rage-filled attack. Investigators also believed that he took pieces of the carpet with him as he knew there was blood on the carpet. The small blood stains found near Jennifer's bed and the DNA from the carpet match that of Matthew's. After this, Matthew became the main suspect and was charged with murders 3 months after the death of his family members. However, he denied all charges. He stated he was at his girlfriend's house when the murders happened and only found the bodies next morning. Matthew pled not guilty, leaving the investigators to build the case on circumstantial evidence. This included his contradictions to his statements to the police, forensic evidence placing him at the scene, and most importantly, the note. 2 years after the murders, when Matthew was brought to trial, he did not admit to the crimes and was also supported by his father, his uncle, and his girlfriend. All of them provided character testimonies that he had a gentle nature and that the entire family shared a loving environment. They also testified that they did not notice any abnormal injuries or behavior from Matthew. On October 14, 1998, the jury had come to a conclusion. He was found guilty of 3 counts of murder. He was then sentenced to 28 years for each count to be served concurrently. He secured early parole in August 2019. His mother's side did not oppose his parole, and prison authorities cited his behavior as excellent. During his entire sentence, he only had 2 infringements of discipline. He also studied and obtained trade qualifications. However, the NSW government opposed parole due to the seriousness of the offenses. On the other hand, the parole authority found that he had done everything that was demanded of him by corrective services. He was released as of August 14, 2019, after serving 23 years of the 28-year sentence. While he is a free man now, he must attend psychological counseling sessions and not contact the victims' families other than his father. He is not allowed to be in the city where the murders were committed. It is reported that he's currently staying with his father. To this date, Matthew has never confessed to his crimes, and his father has stood by Matthew's side. Now, this is the end of the story, but what are your thoughts about this case? Do you think the sentence was fair? Do you think Matthew did it? Leave your opinion in the comments down below. I covered today's story as a subscriber, PM, had requested an Australian story to be covered. And surprisingly, this case has not been covered as much as I thought it would have been. PM, thank you for your request. While I do have other stories on the way, another subscriber has requested a video for Gruchy Deaths, aka House of Secrets. This is a true crime story, a very wild and fascinating one from India. What do you think? Would you want this story covered? If you have not heard about it, or if you would like me to cover it, let me know in the comments, please. I would love to cover this story because it's just so fascinating to me, but I am afraid that everyone kind of already knows about it. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below, please, and thank you. I hope you have a wonderful day.